Now, a lot of people would look at this and be like, he's growling. Why aren't you correcting for it? And I think we get way too hung up on individual pieces of body language or communication. So they would look at the growling and they would say that is inherently bad. But let's look at the entire picture of what we're seeing. What we're seeing is a dog that is basically minding his own business right now. He's uncomfortable around the other dogs. He's not putting himself into harm's way. But when the other dogs come close to him, he gets uncomfortable. He gives a warning sign that he's uncomfortable, and immediately post-warning sign, he turns around and runs the opposite direction. That picture is exactly what we want him to do when he's uncomfortable. Forget the growl. He's avoiding conflict. He's making it known I'm uncomfortable, and he is doing everything in his power to avoid conflict. There's nothing to correct here, and in actuality, a lot of people would look at this as bad, and I look at this as a beautiful starting place that we're working with, because he's not seeking problems out.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so individual pieces that apply to one specific dog, right?
Yeah.
So naturally, the comments we start getting on stuff like this is, well, of course we would never correct for growling. We would never correct for growling. Because if you correct for growling, it'll cause dogs to lead right to biting and this and that, blah, 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 right? So again, just like I said, how some people from one side of the equation who say correct for growling get too hung up on the growl itself and say, it's a growl, it's bad, we have to correct for it. Mm-hmm. Now we have the other side coming in and doing the exact same thing. Of course, it's a growl, we would never correct for it, right? Yeah. But what I'm trying to get across here is with the individual dog you're working with, don't just look at one piece of what they're doing. Look at all of the pieces of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? And in this dog's case, we had him out in a social, and again, he was avoiding the other dogs because he was uncomfortable with them. And the dogs, if they would try to approach him, he would growl then run away. He would growl then run away. He would growl then run away, to which I said, there's nothing wrong with that. In the total context of what he's doing, he's communicating something, saying, I'm uncomfortable. Some dogs communicate that by growling. Some dogs communicate that by tensing up. Others communicate that by kind of showing a little teeth, right? Mm-hmm. There's many different ways that a dog might communicate when they're uncomfortable with something. But then his response so basically you have a dog that's going to show in some way that they're uncomfortable or that they're excited or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And then they're going to do something with that, right?
Yeah.
So there's the visual display of being uncomfortable. And then there's the action in which the dog does when they're uncomfortable, right? Fight, flight, freeze, right? Yep. Those are the three things that a dog might do when being put in a position where they're uncomfortable. In this dog's case, he chooses flight. I've got zero fucking problem with that.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you want your dog to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Other dogs might freeze, right? They might growl and they might freeze up and tense up and stay there. But then we have to look at, is that inherently a problem? Not necessarily, but what does he do when he freezes and then the pressure builds up even more? At some point, he's not going to continue to freeze. At some point, he's going to then choose fight or flight.
Yeah,
right? So
for
we
sure.
need to further assess the individual dog we're working with and determine what does he do then?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So it's interesting because all of these things go to show it really is a matter of you have to be able to diagnose the individual situation that you're working with.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So that's video number one, and then again, comments, we had somebody else comment that said, here, what did they say? I just saw this one today. On the same video, they said, what about a dog growling in general? It's well, what do you mean growling in general? Like dogs don't just growl to growl.
Yeah.
Right? So what I would need to know all of the details of the context in which the dog is growling.
Yeah.
Right? Because some people look at it, they're like, well, he's just growling. It came out of nowhere, right? He's not doing it for any reason. But it's well, I bet you if we were to zoom back a little bit and assess everything going on in that scenario, we probably can determine a reason for why the dog is actively growling then in that situation.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Then you get to okay, cool. Well, let's say the dog doesn't freeze. They don't flee. They fight, right? The dog goes into a situation, they growl, and then if the pressure builds up anymore, then they attack, right? Or they snap, or they do something like that.
Yeah.
To which we would have to then come up with a different plan in order to work through that, right? And then we would have to determine, is it a snap with commitment, right? Are they actually trying to injure the other dog, right? Are they actively pursuing and going for the dog? You know what I mean? Like there's just so many little pieces to the equation when it comes to this kind of stuff. And again, the point I want to get across to everybody is none of these things you see online apply to every single dog. They're different things to entertain and educate on reasons why a dog might do a certain thing or reasons why a thing might be okay or not okay or scary or not scary, but they're not universal rules that apply to every single dog.